think we have to start, okay? It's already very late. You all joined very late today. So yesterday we were discussing about some different types of reflex. Have you discussed this? What I was telling? Micturation reflex.
Huh?
First solution.
In expression, have you not discussed about micturation? Do you know what is micturation? What is micturation?
The expulsion of urine.
Yes. What is micturation? Yes. Okay. The passage of urine from the urinary bladder through the urethra, and which is removed from the body. That means the expulsion. Okay. The what? Yes, you can say that is the what I was telling, elimination of urine from the body, or removal of the urine, or the expulsion of the urine from the urinary bladder through the urethra. Okay.
Ma'am, slides are not visible.
Yeah, I have not shared the slide. Just wait, okay? Okay, so let's discuss about micturation reflex, okay, today. Where is it? So micturation, you understand, you have read about micturation, what is definition of micturation, but here today what I'm going to tell you is how the micturation reflex starts and who are the nerves involved in causing micturation, and how this reflex happen. Okay, that we are going to discuss. So this micturation reflex, it is initiated by bladder efferents, okay, and it is stimulated when bladder is filled and stretched. So this micturation reflex will start when the bladder is filled, and due to the filling of the bladder by urine, the bladder muscle will get stretched. Okay, and this reflex system is located in the lumbosacral enlargement, and it includes pelvic nerves and the hypogastric nerves as the efferent inputs, and the efferent fibers to the bladder in the pelvic nerve and to the external urethral sphincter in the pudendal nerve. Okay, you see in this picture, this is somewhat, is it blurred? Can you see the words? What is written? Can you see the words? It is somewhat small. I will read out for you, okay? So this figure is, the balloon-like structure is showing urinary bladder, okay? The urinary bladder, and this is, means this will be the upside and this will be the down. This will be facing towards the urethra, okay? So this is the urinary bladder, and this is the opening of the urinary bladder, that is the urethral sphincter muscle. The urinary bladder is innervated, okay? It is innervated by the, it should be hypogastric. Yeah. So here, this is urinary bladder. The muscle of the urinary bladder is the what muscle? That is detrusor muscle. So the urinary bladder is innervated by hypogastric nerve. Okay, the muscle of the urinary bladder is innervated by hypogastric nerve, which is a sympathetic nerve. Okay, this is a sympathetic nerve, and this is also the detrusor muscle of the urinary bladder is also innervated by another nerve, that is pelvic nerve, which is a parasympathetic nerve. The urinary bladder is innervated by hypogastric nerve, that is a sympathetic nerve, and a pelvic nerve, that is a parasympathetic nerve. Okay, and the another nerve, that is pudendal nerve, that is a somatic nerve, innervates the urethral sphincter muscle, that is the opening of the urinary bladder to the urethra. Okay, so that is innervated by another somatic nerve, that is pudendal nerve. Okay, first of all, what you have to understand, there are innervations of three kinds of nerve: hypogastric nerve, that is a sympathetic nerve; pelvic nerve, that is a parasympathetic nerve. These two nerves are innervating the detrusor muscle of the urinary bladder, and another somatic nerve, that is pudendal nerve, innervates the urethral sphincter muscle. Okay. When the bladder is empty, when the bladder is not having urine, there will be less stretching. Okay. And at that situation, this bladder, the activity of this hypogastric nerve and the pelvic nerve is less. Okay, the activity of hypogastric nerve and pelvic nerve is less. At this situation, when the bladder is empty, the pudendal nerve action is more. It allows the contraction of the sphincter muscle. Means when the bladder is empty, the pudendal nerve acts on the urethral sphincter muscle, which allows the closure of the sphincter muscle, that is the opening of the urinary bladder to the urethra. So this sphincter remains closed. Okay, do you understand this? And that the micturation center, okay, the micturation center is located in the bones. That is called the pontine micturation center. Okay, when this urinary bladder starts filling with urine, the pressure inside the urinary bladder will be less. Slowly and slowly, urine will keep filling because this urinary bladder will be receiving two ureters. One ureter here and another ureter here. Okay, it will be receiving urine through the ureters. When the urinary bladder is filling, the pressure will be not much, okay, when it starts filling. And also the detrusor muscle has the ability to stretch. The urinary bladder muscle, it can stretch. Okay, so slowly and slowly the urine will be filling more and more and more. When urine is more, when the pressure is more, when the muscles have stretched to almost to its capacity, maximum capacity, means when the urinary bladder is near to full its capacity. Okay, when it is almost near to its capacity, then the stress receptors present in those detrusor muscle of the urinary bladder will give a signal. Okay, it will give a sensory signal through the sensory part of the pelvic and hypogastric nerve. Okay, it will go to the sensory, it will, the what, the sensation of being stretched will be sensed through the stretch receptors, and it will reach to the spinal cord and then to the micturation center in the bones. Okay, by the signal, the sensory sensation, it will also go to the thalamus, which will further reach cerebral cortex. Okay, the cerebral cortex, yesterday we have discussed about the sensory portion and the motor portion. Okay, the motor center and the sensory centers. So here, this signal, when the urinary bladder muscles have been stretched, the sensation reaches to the micturation center in the pons. Yes. Why are they so late? They are joining 25 minutes. They are joining 25 minutes late. Have they joined now? Have they joined? Let them try. Tell them to try again. Done? Is it done? Okay. So here, what I was telling, yes, when the urinary bladder is almost near to be full, when the stretching has gone to its maximum, the stretch receptors will sense that the maximum of the distance and maximum of the stretching has happened. Now the urinary bladder needs to empty. Okay, then at that time this sensation will go through the pelvic nerve and the hypogastric nerve to the spinal cord, and then it will reach to the pons. Okay, that is called the pontine micturation center. So you remember this. Where is the micturation center? Micturation center is the pontine micturation center, or it is located in the pons. The sensation, the sensory signal also reaches the thalamus, then it reaches the cerebral cortex. So it is the sensory signal which is reaching the cerebral cortex will enable, will give the feeling to that animal that urine needs to be voided. Okay, so the actual term is the voiding of urine is called micturation. This term I was not getting. That means the urine needs to be passed out. So by the time when all the stress happen, by this time the animal will feel the pain, the fullness, okay, that feeling of full bladder, okay, the tendency that we need to pass out the urine. Okay, so that sensation will reach the cerebral cortex. Understand? So by this time, the signal will reach the cerebral cortex. So by the time when the animal is feeling that the urinary bladder needs to be emptied, then at that time, the micturation center will be stimulated and also the cerebral cortex will be stimulated. When the micturation center is stimulated, the micturation center in the pons, that is the pontine micturation center, is stimulated. By this time, these two nerves, the hypogastric nerve and the pelvic nerve, will become very active. Okay, so during this time will happen due to the active firing. There will be synapse of these nerves. Okay, so this is indicating a synapse over here, and through the hypogastric nerve, it will release norepinephrine because it is a sympathetic nerve and it allows the contraction of the detrusor muscle. Okay, and also the pontine center, it will also give a signal through the pelvic nerve, which is the relaxation of the detrusor muscle. Okay, so norepinephrine will be binding with its beta 1 receptors, while the acetylcholine will be binding with the M3 receptors. Okay, so no need to go up to this level. Simply you know this is a sympathetic nerve, a hypogastric nerve, and the pelvic nerve is a parasympathetic nerve. Okay, but when it is maximum full, okay, means when the bladder is full enough, at that time there will be contraction of overall, there will be more of the contraction of the detrusor muscle, and by this time the cerebral cortex will also give a signal through the somatic nerve, through the pudendal nerve, and this nerve will be, by this time this nerve will be inactivated. This will be inhibited actually. Okay, these two nerves will be activated while the pudendal nerve will be inhibited. So earlier when the bladder was empty, what was the function of this pudendal nerve? It was to keep the urethral sphincter muscle contracted, keeping the sphincter closed. Now, when the urinary bladder is full, this nerve, pudendal nerve, is inhibited. So, the constriction, the force for constriction is removed. Due to that, the sphincter muscle will relax and it will allow the opening of the sphincter, opening of the urinary bladder through to the urethra. So due to the contraction of the urinary bladder muscle, the pressure will increase. Now, by this time, the sphincter is open, so urine can pass out from urinary bladder to the urethra. Is it okay now? Is it clear?
Yes,
is it clear how the micturation reflex happen? Is it clear? You have to read 2-3 times. Okay. So what are the nerves innervating? Initially, what was their function before the urine fills the urinary bladder, and how their function changes when the urinary bladder is filled with water. With urine. Okay. So initially, the hypogastric nerve and pelvic nerve were not acting much because the stress was less. But as the stress increases more and more, the feeling of voiding the urine, okay, that goes to the cerebral cortex. So this is the involvement. This is the involvement of the cerebral cortex, which enables animals to get trained. That say in-house cats or dogs, they go they go to particular areas for urination or for defecation. Okay, when they are trained, they remember that they in the cerebral cortex they have the memory that they need to void the urine, they need to contract the urinary bladder. Side by side they remember where they should go and pass the urine, or they should go and pass the and they do the defecation. So this is due to the involvement of the cerebral cortex. Okay, and the micturation center is pontine micturation center. Okay, that is in the bones. Okay, is it okay? I think clear. Okay, so the micturation reflex, it is important reflex. Okay, so in when you are asked about the reflex, you can cite this reflex and explain it. Okay, it will be very nice. Okay, your answer will be very nice. Or even without that, also someone may ask, what is micturation? Explain micturation reflex, like that. Okay, so this picture is showing the two phases. Okay, in the elaborate way. So initially what happens and later on what happens. The pudendal nerve, when the bladder is empty, okay, when the bladder is empty, then the contraction, okay, through the contraction of the bladder, through the relaxation of the bladder, through activation of the pelvic nerve, the bladder relaxes. Okay, and due to that, it inhibits the detrusor muscle. Okay, but when this bladder is filled with urine through the activation of the hypogastric nerve, the bladder contracts and the pudendal nerve is inhibited. By this time, the pudendal nerve is inhibited, but the hypogastric nerve is activated. By this time, the urinary bladder contracts and the sphincter relaxes and the urine passes. Okay, and the sensation, okay, that signal comes from the pontine micturation center. Okay. Shall I go to next topic? Is it okay, micturation? Okay, you have to know it very clearly. Okay, micturation is very important. It is important from excretion point and also from the nervous system point. To remember. Yes, so next topic is control of posture. Okay, how the posture is maintained. Okay, the posture of normal posture of an animal, it is maintained due to continuous activity of a complex. Okay, you read slowly in this line. Okay, it is having different meanings. So there has to be continuous activity of a complex of interacting postural reflexes. So it is not only single reflex that is going to maintain a posture of an animal. So it has to be numbers of complex reflexes working together, and their working together is happening continuously. And that interaction between the reflexes, from one reflex to another reflex, it is a complex, not simple. Okay, it is continuous activity of a complex of interacting postural reflexes. These maintain the recognized normal posture and attitude within the field of gravity. So this is what yesterday I was showing this figure. You see, in this reflex, what happens? The person who was simply standing earlier, after he put his right leg on a nail, then what happens? There is prick on the right leg. Due to this, he flexes his right leg. Okay, when he flexes his right leg, the weight of the person is the weight of the person needs to be borne by the left leg alone, because the center of gravity is now shifted. Earlier, the center of gravity was in the middle, but due to the lifting of this right leg, the center of gravity is shifted towards the towards the left. Okay. So this, what happens? Due to this, the posture changes. Understand? So from this, how after the action of this reflex, the posture changes to this. So something like this, the normal posture of any individual is due to the continuous activity of complex interacting reflexes. You understand? So it is a continuous activity of complex of interacting postural reflexes that maintains a recognized normal posture and attitude within the field of gravity. See, when you have some little bit of back pain, can you walk straight with your posture straight? Will you be able to walk straight?
No, ma'am.
No. Your posture will change. That is, your body is working in response to certain other stimuli. So your reflex is changing. So that way, there has to be a multiple number of postural reflexes, and they will interact, okay, in a complex manner, and this will happen in a continuous way, and that will enable to maintain the posture and attitude, and that has to be maintained within the field of gravity. Okay, so the posture maintaining reflexes are local static reactions. One is segmental static reactions and another is the general static reactions. Okay, in general static reactions, some examples are like tonic neck reflex, another is labyrinthine reflex. That means the tonic neck reflex is something like when you fix your vision on some particular object, okay, and you move, your body is moving. Okay, in that case, what happens? You simply turn your neck, but your vision is still fixed at that object. So that kind of reflex is a tonic neck reflex. Another is labyrinthine reflex. The labyrinthine reflex is like your body's equilibrium is maintained due to the labyrinth which is present in the inner ear. Okay, in the inner ear, the labyrinth which is present in the vestibules. So that is going to maintain the equilibrium of the body. So whenever there is shift in the equilibrium, what happens? That you feel dizziness. Something like when you have been here at Aizol, at Selesi, you have gone to Bongkon or to Aizol. While going, what happens? You go in a very curvy road. While going, you feel something dizziness. That is due to the shift in the equilibrium in your in the vestibules, in the labyrinth. The labyrinth which is present inside the equilibrium in the vestibules, it gives its shifts. So and it continuously tries to maintain the equilibrium. Okay, so that is some kind of labyrinthine reflex. So that is also involved in maintaining the posture reflex. So simply, you remember these names: local static reaction, segmental static reaction, general static reaction. So in general static reactions, tonic neck reflex and labyrinthine reflex are involved. Okay. Local static means some portions of your hand, it may be read for. Segmental means a portion of the body. General means overall body reactions. Okay, so like that you remember local static reaction, segmental static reaction, and general static reaction. Okay, so here what is local static reaction, in which only a part of the body, say like one limb is concerned, how you move your fingers, or how you move your hand or forehand, or that the segmental static reaction which involve the segment of a body, say like the lower part of your body, or both the hind limbs of the body, or both the forelimbs, or the upper part of the body, some segment of the body is involved. Another is a general static reaction, in which more than one segment or even the whole body comes into action. Okay, so this is about the posture maintaining reflex. Okay, so this figure I have shown you earlier. Yes. The next few topics, okay, it will be somewhat difficult to understand. Okay, it will be somewhat difficult to understand. You have to read 2-3 times. Okay, then it will be clear. So this is something like how the informations are processed. Okay, how the informations are received from different portions of the body, and how they are carried to the higher centers in the brain, and how they are integrated, and then how they are processed there, and in response to that, how the informations are again given in the form of motor activities. That means the sensory signal and the motor signal, how they coordinate to one another. That is the integration of the nervous system. Okay, so the sensory system, what happens, the sensory pathway contains a chain of 3 neurons, that is neurons conveying the impulses from periphery into the spinal cord or cranial nerve nuclei, neurons projecting to the cells in the lateral and posterior areas of the thalamus, and some neurons terminating on the motor neurons in the spinal cord. Okay, and thalamic neurons projecting to the sensory portions of the cerebral cortex. So the sensory system is going to perceive the sensations through these 3 kinds of the neurons. Okay, so these sensory neurons will perceive the signal, okay, and their pathways. How is their pathway is that these sensations, okay, so these sensations from the different sensory areas, they are conducted immediately, okay, to multiple areas in the spinal cord at all the levels. The sensations which are coming received from different locations will be going at the different levels of the spinal cord. Then it will go to the reticular substance of the medulla, then pons and mesencephalon of the brain. Okay, then it will reach the cerebellum, and then the thalamus, and finally it will reach to the cerebral cortex. Okay, so how it is reaching? It will be perceived from different locations of the body. The sensory pathway includes the sensation from the multiple areas going and reaching to the spinal cord at different levels, reaching the reticular substance of the medulla, okay, pons and mesencephalon of the brain, then the cerebellum, okay, then the thalamus, okay, it is reaching the spinal cord, then medulla, pons, then cerebellum, then the thalamus, okay, then multiple areas in the numbers of areas in the cerebral cortex. Okay, then these somatic sensations, it may be of, again, mainly of 3 types. They are classified mainly as 3 types. They are as mechanoreceptive senses, thermoreceptive senses and pain and nociceptive senses. So under these mechanoreceptive senses, multiple number of sensations will come. Okay, that means the mechanoreceptive senses, it detects the mechanical displacement of some bodily tissues. Through the thermoreceptive senses, it will detect the changes in temperature, cold and warm. And through pain or nociceptive senses, it will sense the pain. Okay, and further, those sensors, okay, the different other types of sensors, okay, or different receptors are again further classified. Like mechanoreceptors, that means which can sense the skin tactile sensation, deep touch sensation, equilibrium receptors, arterial pressure receptors. Okay, so they all come under mechanoreceptors. Thermoreceptors means which will sense, these are the receptors to sense cold and warm. Electromagnetic receptors, okay, so they are, this example is vision. Okay, the photoreceptors like rods and cones present in the eye, in the retina. Okay, then the chemoreceptors, those chemoreceptors, which can smell, or which can sense the smell, which can sense taste, vomeronasal sensations, arterial oxygen osmolarity, blood carbon dioxide concentration, hormone receptors, they all come under chemoreceptors. Okay, then nociceptors means the painful sensation. So these are all about the sensory receptors. So these receptors will sense different kinds of senses. It will reach the spinal cord, reach the medulla, then bones, then the cerebellum, then it will reach the thalamus, then it will go to the sensory cortex. In the cerebral cortex, it will reach to the sensory cortex. Okay, so this is about the sensory pathway. So in response to these sensory signals, okay, how the brain is going to integrate, okay, how to the brain is going to respond, that will come in the form of the motor system. Okay, so the motor system again is classified into two types, that is from the pyramidal system and other is from the extrapyramidal system. So the pyramidal system consists of pyramidal cells in the cortex and their efferent pathways to skeletal muscles. And the extrapyramidal system, it consists of all other portions of the central nervous system that are not included in the pyramidal system. Okay, so what happens here, these motor centers, okay, the extrapyramidal and the extrapyramidal, so how they will travel, okay, how they will travel, that is from the first, it will start from the spinal cord, then to the reticular substance of the medulla, then the pons and the mesencephalon, then the basal ganglia, then it will reach the cerebellum, and then it will reach the motor cortex. Okay, so motor cortex, how it will, the how it is going to coordinate, so this will reach these, what they will perform in response to the signal, okay, received from this area. That means it will go from the spinal cord, the motor pathways up to the spinal cord, then the reticular substance of the medulla, then the pons and the mesencephalon, then the basal ganglia, then the cerebellum and the motor cortex. Okay, so from here it will give the motor sensations and it will exhibit into the organs, whether it may be the muscle, whether it may be the some other glands or whatever. Okay, that is the motor. This is about the motor pathway. Okay, so here we won't go much into detail. Simply what are the components of the sensory pathway, what are the components of the motor pathway, that you remember. Okay. Then motor system is consisting of two types, pyramidal system and extrapyramidal system, like that you remember. Okay, so in the next class we'll discuss about learning memory, that means the higher activities of the nervous system. Okay, this comes under higher activities of the nervous system, so this we will discuss. So you want to ask anything? You remember this table, okay? This table, what do you understand by mechanoreceptor and what are the examples of mechanoreceptors? What is thermoreceptor? I told you, okay? Thermoreceptor means we can sense temperature fluctuation. Electromagnetic receptor, vision is one example of electromagnetic receptor, okay? Then photoreceptors means examples are rods and cones. Chemoreceptors, they can smell, taste. The smell receptors, taste receptors, they are all under chemoreceptors. Nociceptors means the painful sensations. Okay. We have discussed many things today. Okay. One is micturation, mechanism of micturation. Next, we have discussed what are the sensory receptors, what is the sensory pathway. Oh, yes, maintenance of posture, somatic sensations, what are the sensory pathway, what are the motor pathways. You have to read, okay? Otherwise it will be difficult. So how the main function of the nervous system is to integrate, okay, is to integrate all these activities of the sensory pathway and the motor pathway. So that process, okay, that process of integrative activity, okay, that is the main function of the nervous system. You want to ask anything today's class? You read, okay, it is there in my notes. You read this processing of information, that is integrative function of the nervous system, okay? So that is important. I have not given much into details. Simply you remember the step, okay, one by one. If you remember, that is enough. Okay, you can leave then.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.